There are places on Earth where winter does not arrive. It never leaves. Where the sun is no longer a daily presence, but something remembered, and the land sinks into darkness for months at a time.
Back in Soviet times and in the 19th, when the country was in chaos, how did kids go to school?
In this silence of ice, the air itself becomes dangerous. Breath does not fade, it freezes. Exhalation turns instantly into crystalline dust, breaking apart mid-air before falling like ash made of glass. Cold here does not behave like weather, it behaves like pressure. It enters through seams, through silence, through time itself. Every exposed surface becomes a point of failure. Skin does not simply chill, it stiffens, then numbs, then begins to lose its authority over the body. Metal becomes fragile, wood contracts audibly. Even sound feels slowed, as though the atmosphere itself resists movement. Deep in the frozen heart of Siberia, there is one such place, Oymyakon, a remote settlement in the Sakha Republic, where temperatures have fallen to minus 71.2 degrees Celsius, among the lowest ever recorded in a permanently inhabited place. But the real question is not how cold it gets, it is how life continues at all, in conditions that seem designed to erase it. This is the story of the frozen souls who refuse to surrender.
이동으로 나오랍니다.
This is the land of ice and silence. Nestled deep within a vast, bowl-shaped depression on the Oymyakon Plateau, surrounded by jagged, snow-covered mountains that rise like the walls of a frozen fortress. Here, cold air sinks and settles into the valley, trapped by the peaks, unable to escape. At roughly 700 meters above sea level, along the Indigirka River, this remote valley has earned its fearsome reputation. The name Oymyakon comes from the Even language, meaning unfrozen patch of water. A haunting reminder that even in this kingdom of frost, small pockets of life resist. Yet, for most of the year, the land is locked solid. Permafrost stretches hundreds of meters deep, gripping the earth in an unyielding embrace. In winter, the ground heaves and cracks with thunder-like sounds, as if the planet itself strains under endless cold. In the brief daylight hours, it hangs pale and distant. The wind moves through skeletal larch trees, carrying echoes of ancient nomads who once crossed these lands. This is not scenery. It is a living force, shaping every breath, every step, every decision. In Oymyakon, nature does not whisper. It demands respect. For the people who live here, survival begins with understanding its rules. But how did humans ever choose to stay here and turn this frozen wilderness into home? For centuries, this was never a place for permanent settlement. The nomadic Even and Yakut peoples moved across these lands with their reindeer herds, following the rhythm of the seasons, in a way of life as old as the ice itself. Oymyakon was never a destination. It was a seasonal stop, a brief refuge where fish could be pulled from beneath the ice, and travelers could rest before continuing across the endless white expanse. Then came the thunder of change in the 1930s. The Soviet Union, seeking control over its vast wilderness and wandering peoples, reached into this remote region. Nomads were ordered to abandon their way of life. Reindeer herders were forced to settle, told to build permanence where nature had long resisted it. What emerged from the permafrost was more than houses. It was a defiant stand against the land itself. At its peak, the population rose beyond 2,000. Today, it remains between 500 and 900 resilient souls. The legacy of that settlement shapes everything. A mix of Soviet-era structures and wooden homes raised on stilts to protect against shifting permafrost. These were the first frozen souls, people who traded the freedom of movement for a harder daily endurance. They learned to read the ice like a map, to extract fire from frozen land, and to build life where none seemed possible. This place was no longer just a stop. It had become a home. And from that home came a daily struggle unlike anything else on Earth. Living in Oymyakon is not life as most understand it. It is a constant negotiation with the cold, a relentless struggle where every basic need becomes a hard-earned victory. Food, water, clothing, and shelter are not conveniences. They are survival itself. Food is fuel against the cold. The diet is simple yet powerful. Reindeer and horse meat, rich in fats and proteins, sustaining bodies through months of freezing temperatures. These are not casual resources. They are carefully prepared and stored. Dense energy when everything outside works against life. Fresh fruits and vegetables are almost unknown. Only during the brief summer do villagers rush to grow potatoes and hardy greens in small patches of thawed soil, racing against time before the frost returns and seals the land again. Water is its own challenge. There are no reliable pipes, they would freeze and burst instantly. Instead, people melt snow or cut blocks of ice from the frozen river, carrying them home to thaw slowly by the fire. Even sanitation reflects the dominance of the environment. Outdoor structures remain a constant reminder that nature sets the rules here. Clothing becomes armor. Reindeer fur is essential. Its hollow fibers trapping heat against the body. Thick parkas, fur boots, heavy mittens and face coverings leave only the eyes exposed. A single mistake in clothing can lead to frostbite within minutes. Homes are built with equal precision. Raised on stilts, wooden structures stand above the permafrost to prevent heat from destabilizing the frozen ground below. Inside, wood stoves burn continuously, fighting a constant war against the cold pressing in from every side. Every detail, sealing windows, controlling fire, managing heat, becomes a deliberate act of survival. In Oymyakon, nothing is casual. Every action is measured against the cold. Yet within this struggle lies something deeper. Knowledge passed through generations, turning endurance into a way of life. Yet within this struggle lies something deeper. Because survival here is not only about what people do, it is about understanding what they are up against. The cold in Oymyakon is more than weather. It is a force that reaches into every part of life, changing the way people move, work, build, and think. At temperatures below -50 degrees Celsius, the human body begins losing heat with alarming speed. Exposed skin can freeze within minutes. Eyelashes collect crystals of ice. Breath rises into the air and instantly becomes visible, drifting away like smoke from a dying fire. But the cold is not selective. Machines suffer as much as people. Vehicle engines are rarely turned off for long. If left unattended, oil thickens, batteries weaken, and metal contracts until machinery refuses to move. Throughout winter, many drivers keep their engines running for hours, sometimes through the entire night, because restarting can become impossible. Even simple objects behave differently. Plastic turns brittle, rubber hardens, metal burns exposed skin more quickly than flame. A bare hand touching frozen steel can stick instantly, trapped by the same cold that grips the land. Nature adapts in its own way. The forests stand motionless beneath layers of frost. Rivers disappear beneath thick ice. The landscape seems frozen in time, suspended between movement and stillness. Yet, beneath this apparent silence, the cold is constantly at work. It shapes the ground. It shapes the seasons. It shapes the choices people make every day. For outsiders, it is difficult to imagine such conditions. But for those who live here, the cold is not an occasional visitor. It is a permanent companion, a presence that never leaves, and a force that must be understood before it can be endured. Because survival in Oymyakon is not only about living with the cold, it is about learning to think like it. How do they turn this frozen world into a place where families thrive and traditions endure? Survival in Oymyakon is not just endurance, it is mastery, a quiet system of knowledge shaped over generations, refined by necessity and tested every winter. In Oymyakon, adaptation is not a choice, it is inheritance. The architecture itself reflects this understanding. Homes are raised above the ground on wooden supports, carefully lifted to prevent heat from reaching the permafrost below. If the frozen ground warms, it shifts, and anything built on it can slowly sink or become unstable. So every structure exists in balance with the frozen earth beneath it. Clothing carries the same intelligence. Reindeer fur is not simply worn, it is engineered through experience. Its hollow fibers trap insulating air, forming a natural barrier against extreme cold. Every layer has a purpose: outer protection, inner insulation, sealed openings to preserve heat. Dressing is not routine here. It is preparation for survival. Food systems follow the same rhythm of adaptation. Hunting and trapping rely on deep knowledge of animal movement across frozen terrain, patterns preserved in memory rather than written maps. In the short summer, when the surface briefly softens, small gardens are cultivated with urgency. Potatoes and hardy vegetables grow in a narrow window before the frost returns. Even animals are part of this system. Hardy horses and cattle, shaped by extreme conditions, survive where most livestock would not. They provide food, transport, and continuity in a place where machines often fail. But beyond tools and techniques, there is something more important: rhythm. People move with efficiency, not urgency. Every action is deliberate. Time outdoors is minimized, not wasted. Knowledge is passed through observation. Children learn by watching how elders read the wind, the ice, and the limits of the body. This is not survival through resistance. It is survival through understanding, turning limitation into structure, isolation into self-reliance. Yet, even with all this adaptation, Oymyakon is defined not only by hardship, it is defined by continuity. A community bound together by the same environment that challenges them. And within that continuity lies a deeper question. What does it mean to live fully in a place that constantly tests the limits of life itself? Even after generations of adaptation, one challenge remains unchanged: distance. Oymyakon sits deep within one of the most remote inhabited regions on Earth, separated from major cities by vast stretches of wilderness, mountains, forests, and frozen rivers. Reaching the village is rarely simple.
For much of the year, travel depends on roads carved through some of the harshest conditions imaginable. Snowstorms can erase visibility. Ice can transform a routine journey into a test of patience and endurance. The nearest urban centers feel less like neighboring towns and more like distant worlds. Supplies arrive only through long and difficult routes. Fuel, food, building materials, and essential goods must travel across immense distances before reaching the valley. When severe weather arrives, nature decides the schedule. Flights can be delayed. Roads can become impassable. Entire communities may find themselves temporarily cut off from the outside world. In emergencies, this isolation becomes even more apparent. Medical assistance, specialized equipment, and critical services are often far away, separated not only by distance, but by the realities of a landscape that refuses to be crossed easily. Yet the people of Oymyakon have never measured life by convenience. They have learned to rely first on preparation, then on neighbors, and finally on themselves. Perhaps that is why isolation feels different here. It is not experienced as abandonment. It is simply part of the landscape. In a place where the cold dictates nearly every movement, life becomes quieter, not empty, but concentrated. Here, community is not built through constant interaction. It is built through necessity. People gather less often, and when they do, it is usually indoors, where heat gathers and distance disappears. In Oymyakon, silence is not absence. It is the background of life. The village does not feel abandoned. It feels restrained, as if everything has learned to exist without excess movement or noise. Children grow up within this rhythm. They understand early that the world outside is not hostile in emotion, but in condition. So learning becomes practical: how to move, how to dress, how long the body can remain outside before retreat becomes necessary. Festivals and gatherings, when they happen, are brief interruptions in a long cycle of cold. Moments where people come together not to escape the environment, but to briefly share it differently. Inside homes, warmth becomes the center of life. Families gather around heat
and conversation. Stories are shared slowly, often about past winters, memories of hardship, and lessons carried forward through generations. In this way, identity here is shaped quietly, not by isolation alone, but by shared endurance. There is a silent understanding among those who live here. Everyone faces the same environment, and that creates a connection that does not need to be spoken. Because in Oymyakon, survival is not only about enduring the cold, it is about belonging to it, in a quiet, unspoken way.
The meaning of endurance. In the far east of Siberia, Oymyakon continues its cycle as it always has. Winter arrives not as an event, but as a condition that never truly leaves. The land returns to silence, the air tightens, and life adjusts once again to the rhythm of extreme cold. In Oymyakon, nothing is accidental. Every structure, every routine, every decision has been shaped by generations who learned not just how to survive here, but how to remain. There is no illusion of comfort, only acceptance shaped through experience. People do not describe their lives as extraordinary. For them, it is normal, a reality defined not by ease, but by continuity. What seems extreme from outside becomes ordinary when lived long enough. And perhaps that is what makes Oymyakon difficult to define. Not because it is the coldest inhabited place on Earth, but because life here does not feel like constant struggle. It feels like routine, carefully built, carefully maintained, and passed through time. Yet the question remains, why stay in a place like this? The answer is not comfort, it is belonging. In the knowledge that even in one of the harshest climates on Earth, life does not just survive. It continues, quietly and persistently, shaped by the land that surrounds it. And when the camera leaves and the silence returns fully to the valley, what remains is not only cold, it is a reminder that human life does not exist only where conditions are gentle. It exists wherever it chooses to continue.